My name is Ava Parker. I'm 35 years old, and up until recently, I thought I understood what family meant. I believed that love, history, and shared memories were enough to hold people together. That was before I found myself standing outside my mother's 65th birthday party, uninvited. Yes, you heard that right. Uninvited. The spring air in Denver was crisp that morning, the kind of air that makes your lungs feel clean and your heart a little more hopeful. But not for me. I stood there, clutching a carefully wrapped gift, wearing a dress I'd chosen weeks ago, something classic but cheerful, like Mom always liked. Inside, I could hear music and laughter. The scent of gardenias, her favorite, drifted out every time the door swung open. And there I was on the other side of it. When the front door opened again, it wasn't my mother who greeted me. It was my father, Mark, a man of few words and even fewer hugs. His face didn't show surprise, just cold calculation. "You're not on the list," he said, like a security guard at some VIP gala. I blinked. "What? You're not on the list, Ava," he repeated, this time slower, as if I hadn't heard him. "This party is for people who show up, people who care." It hit me like a punch to the chest. I could feel the blood drain from my face. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could speak, I saw her, my sister Jill, tall, poised, wearing the same shade of mauve our mother used to wear in old photographs. Her arm looped around her boyfriend's, the perfect picture of a daughter who never left, never disappointed. She looked at me with a smirk that wasn't even trying to hide itself. "Oh," she said sweetly, "I thought you were in Seattle. Big campaign, or something?" Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt excluded by the very people who were supposed to love you the most? If you have, you're not alone. And this story, this isn't just about one birthday. It's about years of unspoken wounds, buried resentment, and the quiet kind of heartbreak that builds over time. It's about family, the kind that hugs you in public and wounds you in silence. It's about speaking up, even when your voice shakes. Growing up in a small suburb outside of Denver, I was the middle child, always in between. Not the firstborn like Jill, the golden girl with straight A's and a resume tailored for Ivy League. Not the youngest like Luke, our artist baby brother, who painted murals on the garage walls and never had to clean them off. I was Ava, responsible, ambitious, and quietly forgotten. But this, being shut out of my own mother's birthday, this wasn't just an oversight. It was personal, and it was only the beginning. People like to say childhood goes by in a blink, but when you grow up quietly fighting to be seen, it lingers. The memories stretch out, not always sweet, but sharp, vivid, like pages bookmarked by emotion. My childhood in the Parker household wasn't tragic. It was muted, like a black and white photo that everyone pretends is full color. Dad worked as a regional manager for a construction firm. Mom stayed home, running the house like a gentle general, always a to-do list, always a roast in the oven. Jill, the eldest, was the crown jewel. She had her own piano teacher by age 6 and wore tailored jumpers with her name stitched inside the collar. Luke, our baby brother, was all charm, dimples, and giggles, the one Mom called my little sunshine, even when he spilled paint on the white carpet. And me, I was somewhere in the middle, quiet, observant, always waiting my turn. But Mom, Susan Parker, she used to be different with me. I remember it clearly, the day Melissa O'Connor had her 9th birthday pool party and didn't invite me. I'd spent the whole week hoping, checking the mailbox for an invitation that never came. When I finally asked Melissa at school, she shrugged and said, My mom said you're too quiet. I came home that day blinking back tears. Dad dismissed it with a flat, not everyone gets to go to everything. Ava. But Mom, she sat down beside me at the kitchen table, pulled out some paper, and said, "Let's make our own party hats." We wore them while eating chocolate pudding and listening to her old John Denver records. Just us two. "You're special in your own way, Ava," she whispered that night while tucking me in. "Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." She meant it. At least, I believe she did. Another time, I was 12. I'd built a solar system model for the school science fair. It wasn't perfect. The rings around Saturn were slightly tilted, and Jupiter had a fingerprint smudge, but I was proud. I won third place. Not first like Jill had won every year in middle school, but still third. When I brought the certificate home, Dad barely glanced up from his newspaper. "Well," he said, "you tried." "But Mom?" She beamed. She found a silver frame in the hall closet, brushed off the dust, and hung my certificate right next to Jill's wall of accolades. For 3 days, it stood proudly between Jill's spelling bee plaque and her mathlete trophy. Then it disappeared. I noticed the blank spot on the wall one morning before school. When I asked, Dad said it cluttered the hallway. Mom didn't say anything, but that night, when I crawled into her bed during a thunderstorm, I saw it, the framed certificate, tucked carefully into her bedside drawer, wrapped in a floral scarf. Some things mattered quietly. Years passed. We all got older. Jill took AP classes. Luke started showing his art at small-town festivals. And I got good at disappearing. Except Mom never let me vanish completely. My 16th birthday was supposed to be a milestone. I'd planned a backyard movie night with friends, popcorn, fairy lights, even a rented projector. But 2 hours before the party, one friend texted to cancel, then another, and another. Eventually, all 6 of them bailed. Word got around that Haley Nichols was throwing a party downtown with a DJ and her parents out of town. I tried to laugh it off, told Mom not to worry. "I'll just watch a movie alone," I said, but she wouldn't have it. Within the hour, she'd booked us tickets to a musical in the city. She even made dinner reservations, somewhere with linen napkins and a view of the mountains. That night, we dressed up, me in a navy dress she'd picked out months earlier, and her in a green shawl I'd always loved. She treated me like royalty, like I mattered. "It's not about quantity, honey," she said as the curtain rose. "Sometimes it's the quality of connection that really counts." That phrase stuck with me. Through college applications, job interviews, breakups, quality over quantity. She said it again when I left for college, standing at the security gate with tears in her eyes. I was the only one who'd moved out of state. Jill stayed close, attended University of Colorado, and started med school right after. Luke floated from community college to creative exploration without much judgment from anyone. But me, when I chose Seattle, half a country away, it felt like a betrayal to everyone except Mom. "Go live your life," she told me during our last breakfast together before I left. "Don't shrink yourself to fit into a frame that was never built for you." I carried those words with me, but somehow, somewhere along the way, she stopped saying them. The weekly calls became monthly. The excitement in her voice dulled. And eventually, when I did call, she sounded distracted, like she was speaking to a neighbor she once knew, but didn't quite remember anymore. I told myself it was life. People get busy. Parents grow older. But deep down I knew something had changed, or someone had changed it for her. When I moved to Seattle, everything changed. Quickly, the city was fast-paced, moody with rain, and brimming with opportunity. I started at a mid-level marketing firm downtown. Long hours, tight deadlines, people who judged your value by how much coffee you drank and how late you stayed at the office. I adapted fast. By 28, I was managing a team of 10. By 32, I was a senior director at one of the most competitive tech companies on the West Coast. I had an apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows, a parking space I never used, and enough frequent flyer miles to fly to Paris twice a year. And I was exhausted, but respected. I called home. At first, regularly, Mom would ask how things were going, listen carefully, and always end with, "I'm proud of you." Dad would chime in with something like, "Hope they're paying you well," before asking if I was dating anyone yet. Luke texted now and then, photos of paintings, cryptic memes, the occasional sup. But Jill, she barely responded. And when she did, her replies were clipped and cool. It came to a head during Thanksgiving, 3 years ago. I hadn't been home for the holiday in over 5 years. There was always some big project or a client emergency, and truthfully, I never felt missed. But that year, I made the effort, booked the flight early, even took an extra day off to help Mom cook, just like we used to. When I walked into the house, something felt off. Mom looked older, not just in the natural way, but distant, almost distracted. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Dad hugged me like someone greeting a business partner. Luke gave me a nod from behind his phone. And Jill, she acted like I was a guest in her territory. She'd taken over, fully. The dining table had name cards. The stuffing had walnuts in it. Mom hated walnuts. Even the centerpiece looked like something from a Martha Stewart catalog. When I complimented it, Mom said, "Oh, Jill brought that from work." I offered to help in the kitchen. Mom said, "Jill's got it covered." Dinner began well enough. Wine flowed. Stories were shared. But as the meal wore on, the smiles tightened. The silences stretched. And then the landmine. So Jill said, delicately swirling her Pinot Noir, "How's life in Seattle?" Still working those 70-hour weeks at that startup. "It's not a startup," I replied, keeping my tone light. "We're in our 9th year, just hit Series D funding. I lead the North American strategy team now." "Right," she said with a practiced smile. "So, still married to your job?" I laughed, hoping to diffuse it. That's one way to put it. "Well," she added, a little too loudly, "some of us decided to prioritize family over Fortune 500. Dad chuckled. Mom looked down. Luke scrolled his phone. I set my fork down gently. "I call every week, Jill. I send gifts for birthdays. I offer to fly you all out to visit." "But you don't visit?" Jill snapped. "You parachute in for holidays, act like a hero because you brought an expensive bottle of wine, and then disappear again." I blinked. "I'm here now. I took time off. Everything's a performance with you," she said. "Everything's about proving something. We don't need your success shoved in our faces." "Success," I repeated, trying to stay calm. "Is that what this is about?" "You think you're better than us," she whispered sharply. "Because you left. Because you built something." I took a breath, careful and deliberate. "I never said that. I worked hard. I didn't have shortcuts." She laughed bitterly. "You think staying was easy?" "No," I said quietly. "I think staying gave you control." The silence was deafening. Even Luke looked up. "I'm sorry," I added, softer now, "but I've spent years feeling like no matter what I did, it wasn't enough. For Dad, for you, and now for Mom." Mom's eyes filled with something unreadable. Sadness? Regret? I couldn't tell. Jill stood, maybe you should leave." Dad nodded. "I think that's best." And just like that, the table that once held warm bread and shared laughter became a courtroom. I was dismissed without trial. I packed my things, hugged Mom tightly. She didn't hug back. Not long after that, the calls stopped coming. The texts dried up. Birthday cards were missed. Luke sent an emoji on my last birthday. Jill blocked me on Facebook. And Mom, she became a ghost. I'd call, and sometimes she'd answer, distracted, her voice echoing like she was always doing something more important. When she did speak, it was like someone had written a script for her. "Brooke says you're very busy. Brooke says you're traveling again. Brooke says you probably won't have time for Christmas this year." Brooke, that name clung to everything, as if Jill had been rewritten into something softer, more reliable, someone worthy. And me? I was the ambitious one, the selfish one, the outsider. Until the day I saw the Facebook post. It was a Tuesday night. I was in the office late, as usual. The quarterly numbers weren't adding up, and I needed a revised projection report before morning. I leaned back from my monitor and, out of habit, opened Facebook. And there it was, a banner photo, gold and lavender, with balloons and glitter font. "Happy 65th, Susan Parker," celebrating a life of love and family. Posted by Jill. There were photos, Mom laughing in the garden, cutting cake, hugging neighbors. The entire extended family was tagged. Even my second cousin from Minnesota was listed as attending. But not me. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't listed. I wasn't mentioned. I scrolled further, stunned. Comment after comment. So happy to see the whole family together. "Susan, you look radiant. Wish Ava could have made it." Could have made it? No one had told me. Not even Mom. I stared at the screen, the fluorescent lights humming above me, the janitor's vacuum humming below. In that moment, I felt like a child again, standing in the kitchen with a paper party hat, pretending I wasn't heartbroken. I called Mom. It rang and rang. And just when I thought she wouldn't answer, she did. "Ava," she said, surprised, "is everything okay?" "Yeah, I lied. I just saw something about your birthday party." "Oh," she said after a pause. "That. I didn't get an invitation," I said, my voice small. "Well, Jill said you were busy." There it was. Not an oversight. A decision. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just whispered, "Happy birthday, Mom," and hung up. And that's when I decided I was going to that party, even if I had to stand outside the door with the truth burning in my chest. The morning of the party, I woke up with a tightness in my chest. My old roommate, Natalie, now living in Boston, FaceTimed me around 6. "I heard you're flying into Chicago today," she asked. "SQUI. "I am," I said simply, pulling my suitcase toward the door. Mom sounded hesitant the last time we spoke. I need to know if she really wants me there, or if I'm just another name they scratch. She didn't argue, just said, "Be careful, Ava. I remember how your family is." I flew in that evening. Chicago in springtime always held this strange mix of chill and blooming optimism. But I wasn't here to stroll through memory lane. I was here for the truth. The gift I'd picked out, a vintage emerald necklace that reminded Mom of her grandmother, sat nestled inside tissue paper, paired with a spa package to that resort she always talked about but never visited. I spent hours choosing bot. When I arrived at the venue, a restored boathouse overlooking Lake Michigan, I knew right away this wasn't going to be simple. Cars lined the circular driveway, a celebrating Patricia Parker, 65 years of love, banner hung above the entrance. The windows glowed warmly from inside. People laughed. I could hear silverware and jazz music, and I was on the outside once again. I stepped forward, heels clicking on the stone path. My father stood at the entrance in a sharp gray suit, greeting guests like a general overseeing a ceremony. His expression didn't change when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" he asked flat and without a hint of welcome. "I came for Mom," I said carefully. "I spoke to her a few days ago. She said it would be good to see me." "She was being polite," he replied coldly. "You're not on the list." That word again. List. As if I were applying for clearance to see my own mother. "There must be a mistake," I said, feeling the heat rise in my face. "I booked the flight, rearranged meetings." "This is a private event," he cut in, "for people who make time for family." I opened my mouth to respond, but that's when Jill stepped into view. She wore a soft pink dress, nearly identical to one Mom used to wear in family portraits. Her hair curled, just right, arm linked with her boyfriend, Chris. She smiled, tight, rehearsed. "Oh, Ava, I thought you weren't coming. Weren't you in Singapore or something?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the gift into the lake and never look back. But instead, I stood there clutching the wrapped box, heart thudding. That's when a voice behind them said something unexpected. "I think maybe you all should hear her out," before slamming the door. It was Chris. He stepped forward, looking every bit the awkward boyfriend caught in the middle of family drama, but there was steel in his tone. "I'm Chris," he said, turning toward the crowd of onlookers. "And I work at Vertex Technologies in Boston. Ava's my boss." Heads turned. I watched Jill stiffen. Chris continued. "I didn't realize it until recently. Her name didn't register right away. But I've worked under her for months. And I'll tell you something. People at Vertex talk about her with serious respect. Not just because she's brilliant, but because she treats people fairly, with dignity. She's earned every bit of her position." He turned toward my father. "What's happening here?" This wasn't a misunderstanding. At the rehearsal dinner last night, Jill said Ava probably wouldn't show up. You nodded. You planned this. The air went still. Inside the venue, guests paused mid-conversation. A few turned toward the door, curious. I stepped forward again. My voice trembled slightly, but I kept it steady. "I didn't come here to fight," I said. "I came to celebrate Mom. I came because I belong here, and if I'm not welcome, then let her tell me that to my face." There was a flicker in Dad's eyes, discomfort, perhaps even shame. I looked past them, into the crowd, and that's when I saw her. Mom. She stood near the head table, radiant in lavender, her silver hair swept back. She was laughing with one of her old neighbors, completely unaware of the drama unfolding at the entrance. I walked past Jill and my father without waiting for permission. Chris followed. As I entered, heads turned. Conversations paused. People shifted awkwardly, unsure what was happening, but sensing that this moment, this woman walking in with such calm defiance, was the start of something. I approached the table and set the gift gently beside the cake. Then Mom saw me. "Ava." Her voice cracked, surprised. Her eyes lit up. "You came." I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Of course I came. Before anything else could be said, Jill was at our side. "Mom, I thought we agreed." "We did not agree to exclude my daughter," Mom said firmly, her voice rising. Chris stepped up again. "She didn't know Ava planned to come." Jill told her Ava sent regrets. Mom turned toward Jill. "You told me that?" Jill flushed. "I thought it would avoid stress." "That's not your decision to make," Mom said, Then she turned back to me, her voice cracking. I'm so sorry, honey. I nodded slowly. I needed to know where I stood. The room was watching us now. The crowd quiet, respectful, but riveted. Then Jill's mask finally cracked. I'm so tired, she said suddenly. So tired of trying to be the perfect daughter. The one who stays. The one who drives mom to appointments. The one who handles everything. And you sweep in with your fancy job, and everyone applauds like you're some hero. I never asked for applause, I said softly. But you got it anyway, she snapped. Mom took a step toward her, voice gentle now. Jill, I never compared you. I love you differently. Yes, but not less. But you kept her third-place science fair certificate, Jill whispered, tears brimming. You still keep it, after all these years. I was stunned. That meant something to me, Mom said, because she was proud of it, because she tried. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my father, silent until now, cleared his throat. Maybe we all made some wrong assumptions. It wasn't an apology, but from him, it was close. Mom turned to the room. Everyone, please, enjoy the food. Enjoy the music. My family and I need a moment. She ushered the four of us into a side lounge, away from the guests. The door closed behind us with a gentle click. Inside, the silence was thick. Then Mom looked at each of us and said, Sit down, all of you. We obeyed like children. She turned to Dad first. Did you really turn our daughter away at the door? I thought I was protecting you, he muttered, after Thanksgiving. By humiliating her? She asked. At my birthday? Jill spoke next, her voice shaking. I didn't want to share anymore. It's like everything she touches turns to gold. And I'm just here. I never tried to compete with you. I said gently, I just wanted space to breathe. I didn't ask for this narrative. Chris added, I've been around enough now to see it clearly. Ava's not the villain, but she's been cast as one for years. Mom closed her eyes, taking a breath. No more secrets, no more gatekeepers. If something needs to be said, it will be said openly. She reached across the table, took my hand in one, Jill's in the other. We're not perfect, but we can start again. I nodded, and for the first time in years, I believed her. Later, as we returned to the celebration, I slipped the emerald necklace around Mom's neck. It caught the light as she smiled at the photographer. That photo, it still sits on my desk. Proof that healing doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it starts quietly at the edge of a party you weren't supposed to attend. The party resumed after our family stepped out of that side room, but everything felt different. The air was softer somehow, lighter, as if the truth, even when it stung, had cleared away something stale. Guests went back to chatting, nibbling canapes, and pretending they hadn't just witnessed a generational showdown. I stood near the drink station, pretending to sip sparkling water, when Mom came up beside me. She didn't say much, just reached out, placed her hand on my arm, and whispered, "Thank you for coming. It means more than you could ever know." I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. A part of me still expected the other shoe to drop, that this piece was temporary, conditional. But then she said, "Do you want to go for a walk by the lake? Just you and me." We stepped outside together. The sun was dipping low, casting golden threads across the surface of Lake Michigan. She touched the emerald necklace I'd given her, holding it like it was something sacred. "You remembered the one from my grandmother," she said softly. "I told you about it once when you were 10. I didn't think you'd even remember." I remember everything you said when it mattered. I told her. We didn't talk much after that. Just walked. Just breathed. It was the first time in years I'd felt close to her, without also feeling like I was performing for her approval. The next morning, I woke up in my hotel room to 3 messages, one from Mom, one from Dad, and one from Jill. Mom said simply, "I love you. Yesterday was exactly what I needed." Dad's was more stoic. "Glad you showed up. You handled yourself well." But Jill's was the one that made me sit down on the bed and take a long breath. "I owe you a real apology. Can we meet later today? Just us?" She showed up at my hotel, wearing jeans and a wrinkled sweater, hair pulled into a messy bun. She held 2 coffees like a peace offering. We sat across from each other in the small hotel room, barely speaking for a minute. "I didn't just lie," she finally said. "I manipulated. I thought I was protecting Mom from disappointment. Really, I was protecting myself from feeling irrelevant." I didn't respond right away. I let her sit with the weight of that sentence. I've spent so long trying to be the one who stayed, the one who handled things, the one who knew what Mom needed before she said it out loud. And then you come in after years away, and she lights up like a Christmas tree. "I wasn't trying to steal that from you," I said gently. "I know," she whispered, "but I made you the villain because it was easier than facing what I'd become." We talked for hours about childhood, about resentment, about what it meant to be daughters to the same mother, but in such different ways. When she left, we weren't completely healed, but we were at least honest. When I got back to Boston, work greeted me like an old friend with a clipboard. I had 3 strategy meetings, 2 client calls, and a performance review waiting. But there was something different now, like a current had shifted underneath everything. HR called me in to discuss the incident, as they politely put it. A few team members had seen Facebook photos or heard whispers. I explained what happened in clear professional terms, then offered to write a brief internal statement, not personal, but transparent. Later that week, I recorded a short video for our internal portal. "Hi, everyone." I began sitting at my desk in natural light. Over the weekend, I had a personal situation with my family that became more visible than I expected. What I learned is that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's a different kind of strength. I'm still me, still your VP, still committed to what we do, but maybe a little more whole now. The responses surprised me. Colleagues I barely spoke to emailed support. Junior staffers thanked me for modeling real leadership. Even the CEO sent a quick note. "You didn't have to share that. The fact that you did makes you more valuable, not less." 3 weeks later, Mom called. "I've been thinking," she said, "would it be okay if I visited you in Boston next month? Just me." My heart caught in my throat. "You mean like a real visit?" "I want to see your world," she said, "not through gifts or photos, through your eyes." I booked her flight that same night. When she arrived, I picked her up at Logan Airport, just like I used to do for clients. She looked smaller than I remembered, but her eyes were bright. We spent 5 days together, walking through my neighborhood, eating at my favorite Thai spot, visiting my office where I introduced her to my team. One of my colleagues, a brilliant young analyst named Priya, shook her hand and said, "Your daughter changed how I see leadership. I didn't think I could do this job and be myself until she proved it's possible." Mom looked at me like she was seeing something new for the first time. We spent an afternoon at the public library, sitting in the hidden courtyard garden I visited on stressful days. She looked around, smiled, and said, "I can see why you needed this place." On her last night, I gave her a framed photo of the two of us at the lake during her party. To remind you, I said, that we found our way back. She hugged me tightly. I'm proud of the woman you've become, she said, not because of your title, because you're brave. We talked every week after that. Eventually, even Dad started softening. He'd send tech articles to my email with subject lines like, "Thought this might be up your alley." Small, clumsy gestures, but they mattered. Jill and I weren't best friends, but we stayed in touch. She started seeing a therapist, joined a book club, even visited me once in Boston. We sat on my balcony drinking wine and laughing at how different we were and how that didn't have to be a bad thing. That Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner at my apartment. Mom brought her famous green bean casserole. Dad made awkward small talk with my team members who dropped by. Luke brought a date, an artist named Juno who wore mismatched earrings and charmed everyone. Jill brought a bottle of wine and a set of matching napkins she'd picked out with care. As we stood around the table, Mom raised her glass. "I want to thank Ava," she said, "for reminding us that sometimes the person who leaves is also the one who leads us home." We toasted, we ate, we laughed, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was visiting family. I felt like I belonged. That night, as I washed dishes, and the rest of the family played charades in the living room, I looked out the window at the city skyline. We were messy, imperfect, still awkward at times, but we were trying. And maybe that's the most honest kind of love there is. There's a moment after the storm clears and the last guest has gone, when the house goes quiet and you can finally hear yourself think. It was a few days after that Thanksgiving dinner. The dishes had been washed, the laughter had faded into memory, and Mom had flown back to Denver with a new book in her purse and a candle from my kitchen in her suitcase. Jill texted me a recipe the next morning, and Luke sent a selfie from an art show Juno had curated. It was small, casual, but it meant everything. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee, and thought about the journey that had brought me here, from being turned away at a birthday party to hosting my own version of family on my own terms. A version rooted not in perfect roles, but in real conversations, real effort, and real forgiveness. And here's what I've learned. Family isn't just about blood. It's not about who stayed or who left. It's not about who got the most praise or who made the most sacrifices. Family is a constantly shifting, living thing. It breathes. It bruises. It heals if we let it. Sometimes the person cast as the outsider is the one carrying the deepest love, the quietest pain, the strongest hope. Sometimes speaking your truth, even when your voice shakes, is the very thing that opens the door to healing. Not just for you, but for everyone else who's been silently waiting on the other side of their own wounds. I used to think that success meant outgrowing my family's opinions, that if I could just build enough, build big enough, I'd be untouchable. But the truth, no amount of success replaces the ache of being misunderstood by the people who were supposed to know you best. And no professional title can quiet the little girl in you who just wanted her science fair certificate to stay up on the wall a little longer. That little girl deserves to be seen. So does the woman she became. These days, my office shelves carry more than reports and quarterly forecasts. There's a photo of me and Mom at the Boston waterfront, a ceramic pin Luke made when he was 10, a framed note from a colleague that reads, "Thanks for reminding me leadership is about courage, not control." They remind me of who I am, not just what I've achieved. I still travel. I still lead teams. But I also call my mother on Tuesdays because that's her new favorite day to talk. I text Jill random memes, and we meet for brunch once every few months. We're not perfect, but we're intentional, and that's a kind of love I never thought we'd reach. So if you're listening to this, and you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, like your story has been rewritten without your permission, or your voice was too soft to matter, this part is for you. You are not alone. You are not too late. You are not too much. Speak your truth. Show up, even when it's uncomfortable. Walk toward the people who matter, even if the door was once closed. Because sometimes they're just waiting for someone brave enough to knock again. And if they never open it, build your own. Fill it with kindness, with chosen family, with your own rituals and joy. But never forget, you belong. You always did. Have you ever stood outside a door that was supposed to be open for you? Have you ever had to reclaim your place at a table that tried to erase you? If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Leave a comment. Share your experience. You never know who it might help. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, stories about messy love, real people, and the courage to speak your truth, hit that like button and subscribe. Because we all deserve to feel seen, even if it takes us years to get there. Thank you for listening. I'm Ava Parker, and this was my story. 3 months after Thanksgiving, Mom called me out of the blue. It was a Wednesday evening. I'd just come out of a leadership summit where I'd given a keynote on human-centered strategy. My phone buzzed as I stepped into the elevator. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, voice softer than usual. "I've been thinking." That sentence always made me pause. "I want to try family therapy," she continued, "with all of us, together." The words landed with a weight that was both terrifying and hopeful. All of us, Mom, Dad, Jill, Luke, me, in one room, not arguing, not accusing, but actually listening. "I think that's a good idea," I said. "A really good one." She exhaled. "It's time we stop surviving each other and start understanding each other." We booked the first session for mid-April in a neutral space in Denver. A cozy office with a round table and soft lighting. Our therapist, a woman named Dr. Flores, had warm eyes and a calm demeanor like she'd seen every kind of family chaos and still believed in redemption. The first session was awkward. Dad crossed his arms. Jill avoided eye contact. Luke doodled in his notebook. I sat with my back straight, every muscle tense. But then Mom spoke. "I've realized I didn't just hurt Ava by staying silent. I hurt all of you by letting silence become our language." That cracked something open. We didn't collapse into hugs and confessions. Not yet, but we started talking, real talking, about grief, about missed birthdays, about how love sometimes wears masks like guilt or pride, about how none of us knew how to reach for each other without also fearing rejection. Every month we met, and each time we brought something a little more honest to the table. Dad admitted he'd modeled emotional distance because that's what he'd learned from his father. Jill confessed she envied my courage and resented feeling like she had to hold everything together alone. Luke, for the first time, said he often felt invisible. Everyone talks about who left or who stayed. No one ever asks what it's like to be the quiet one standing in the background. I told them that being successful never made me feel whole. It just made the silence around our disconnection louder. We didn't fix everything. We didn't always agree. But we built something better than agreement. We built clarity. We built boundaries. And most importantly, we built respect. Now, when I call home, it's not out of obligation. It's because I want to. When Jill texts me, it's not to keep score. It's to share something funny or ask for advice. And when I fly to Denver or they fly to Boston, it's not to perform family. It's to practice it. Practice. That's the word I keep coming back to. Family isn't a static picture. It's a rhythm, a dance. Some days you miss a step. Some days you lead. Some days you follow. But you keep showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens in the showing up, in the trying again, in the belief that even the most broken bonds can still, with time, become strong.